Kobbie Mainoo ready to quit Manchester United? The shocking truth behind Amorim's snubs. Welcome to United News, your #1 source for everything Manchester United. When the world of Old Trafford gets confusing, when stories need proper explaining, when you need the real facts behind the headlines, this is where United fans find their home. We dig deeper than anyone else to bring you the complete picture that other sources miss or get wrong. Today, we need to talk about something that could shake Manchester United to its core. One of the brightest stars to come out of the academy in recent years might be ready to walk away from Old Trafford. Kobbie Mainoo, the 20-year-old midfielder who many thought would be the future of this club, is reportedly willing to quit United. But why would a homegrown talent want to leave the club he grew up supporting? What has gone so wrong that a player with his potential is considering his future elsewhere? And most importantly, what does this mean for United's long-term plans? The story that has everyone talking. The news broke like a thunderbolt through the United community. According to reports from TalkSport, Kobbie Mainoo is open to leaving Manchester United before the transfer window closes next week. This is not just any player we are talking about. This is a lad who came through the academy, who understands what it means to wear the red shirt, who seemed destined to be a key part of United's future. But here is the shocking part. Mainoo has not played a single minute of football this season. Not 1 minute. He has been named on the bench twice under Ruben Amorim, but when it comes to actual playing time, he might as well not exist. For a 20-year-old midfielder who showed such promise last season, this must feel like a slap in the face. Imagine working your whole life to get to this point, only to find yourself completely frozen out by the new manager. The reports suggest that if United receive an acceptable offer for Mainoo, he would seriously consider leaving. Chelsea have been mentioned as a possible destination, but the player himself is thought to be open to a move abroad. When a homegrown talent starts looking at foreign clubs, you know something has gone seriously wrong. Who is Kobbie Mainoo really? Before we dive deeper into this story, let us remind ourselves who Kobbie Mainoo actually is. This is not some random squad player who nobody cares about. This is a midfielder who many United fans believed could be the next big thing to come out of the academy. Mainoo joined United's youth system as a young boy and worked his way up through every level. He showed the kind of dedication and talent that makes coaches sit up and take notice. By the time he reached the first team setup, there was genuine excitement about what he could become. Last season, under Erik ten Hag, Mainoo started to get opportunities with the senior squad. He showed glimpses of real quality, the kind of performances that made you think he could be a regular starter within a couple of years. At just 20 years old, Mainoo has the kind of technical ability and football intelligence that cannot be taught. He can pass the ball, he can press, he can create chances. Most importantly, he understands the game in a way that suggests he could develop into a top-level midfielder. But talent means nothing if you do not get the chance to show it. And right now, under Ruben Amorim, those chances seem to be getting further and further away. The contract situation that makes everything worse. Here is where the Mainoo situation gets even more complicated. The young midfielder has less than 2 years left on his current contract with United. In normal circumstances, this would be the time when the club sits down with the player and his representatives to discuss a long-term extension. But those contract talks have hit a wall. According to reports, Mainoo is looking for wages of around £150,000 per week. For context, that is serious money for a 20-year-old who has barely established himself in the first team. United, for their part, are not willing to meet those demands at this stage. From the club's perspective, why would you pay someone £150,000 per week if your manager does not even think they are good enough to get on the pitch? This creates a dangerous situation for everyone involved. Mainoo feels undervalued both in terms of playing time and financially. United feel like they are being asked to pay huge wages for a player who has not yet proven himself at the highest level. With less than 2 years left on his deal, United are running out of time to resolve this situation. If they cannot convince Mainoo to sign a new contract soon, they risk losing him for a much smaller fee than he is probably worth. What Ruben Amorim really thinks. To understand why Mainoo is struggling for game time, we need to look at what Ruben Amorim has actually said about the situation. The Portuguese manager has not been shy about explaining his thinking. After United's draw with Fulham, Where Mainoo once again failed to get any minutes, Amram was asked about his team selection. His answer was revealing and perhaps a bit brutal. He just needs to fight for the position with Bruno, as it should be at Manchester United. Sometimes he's going to play with Bruno, but at the moment he's fighting in training with Bruno for the position. Think about what this means. Amram is essentially saying that Mainoo is competing directly with Bruno Fernandes for a place in the team. Bruno Fernandes, the club captain, the penalty taker, one of the first names on the team sheet every week. This is like telling a young boxer that he needs to beat Mike Tyson in his prime to get a fight. It is technically possible, but the odds are stacked so heavily against you that it feels almost impossible. Amram also mentioned that he changed 2 midfielders during the Fulham game, bringing on Mason Mount and Manuel Ugarte instead of Mainoo. The message was clear: when the manager needs to change something in midfield, Mainoo is not even the first option off the bench. Gary Neville's harsh assessment. Sometimes the truth hurts, and Gary Neville delivered some harsh truths about Mainoo's situation on his podcast. The United legend looked at the situation with the cold eye of someone who has seen it all in football. It is quite clear that at this moment in time Ruben Amorim isn't having him, Neville said. He starts with Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes, he then puts Mason Mount back in there, and he then brings Ugarte on in front of him. That tells you he is almost fourth choice, really. Fourth choice. Let that sink in for a moment. A 20-year-old academy graduate who many thought could be a future star is currently fourth choice in his position. That is a devastating assessment from someone who knows what it takes to succeed at Manchester United. Neville went on to explain the tactical reasons why United might need to strengthen in midfield. He talked about how the team gets exposed when the front 3 press high and the back 5 sit deep, leaving huge spaces in the middle of the pitch. Those acres of space seem to open up a bit, Neville explained. This suggests that United's midfield problems go beyond individual players and into the tactical system itself. But here is the thing that must hurt most for Mainoo. Neville is basically saying that United need to buy new midfielders because the current options, including Mainoo, are not good enough to solve the tactical problems. The tactical puzzle Amorim is trying to solve. To really understand why Mainoo is struggling, we need to look at the tactical system Ruben Amorim wants to play. The Portuguese manager has very specific ideas about how football should be played, and not every player fits into those ideas. Amorim typically likes to play with a 3-man defense and wingbacks who provide width going forward. This means the midfielders have huge responsibilities both defensively and in attack. They need to cover massive amounts of ground and be comfortable receiving the ball under pressure. In Amorim's system, the central midfielders also need to be able to play different roles depending on the situation. Sometimes they need to sit deep and protect the defense. Sometimes they need to push forward and support the attack. Sometimes they need to cover for the wingbacks when they go forward. This requires a very specific type of player. Someone with exceptional fitness, tactical intelligence, and the ability to make quick decisions under pressure. It also helps if the player has experience playing in different positions and systems. When you look at Mainoo's game, he clearly has talent. But does he have the specific attributes that Amorim is looking for? Based on the manager's team selections, the answer seems to be no, at least not yet. Casemiro brings experience and defensive solidity. Bruno Fernandes brings creativity and leadership. Mason Mount brings energy and versatility. Manuel Ugarte brings pressing and work rate. What does Mainoo bring that these players do not? That seems to be the question Amorim is asking, and so far, he has not found a satisfactory answer. The competition for places. Let us look more closely at the players Mainoo is competing with for a place in United's midfield. This might help explain why he is finding it so difficult to break into the team. Bruno Fernandes is the club captain and one of the most important players in the squad. He is creative, he scores goals, he takes penalties, and he rarely gets injured. Unless something dramatic happens, Bruno will start almost every game when he is fit. Casemiro is a 5-time Champions League winner who brings experience and defensive stability. Yes, he is getting older and maybe not as quick as he once was, but he understands how to control a game from midfield. In big games, that experience is invaluable. Mason Mount was a big-money signing from Chelsea who has struggled with injuries, but is clearly rated highly by the coaching staff. When he is fit, He offers something different with his pressing and movement between the lines. Manuel Ugarte is a new signing who was brought in specifically to fit Amorim's system. The manager obviously sees something in the Uruguayan that made the club spend money to bring him in. So where does that leave Mainoo? He is competing with 4 players who all have something specific to offer. The captain, the experienced winner, the versatile presser, and the new signing who fits the system perfectly. From Mainoo's perspective, this must feel incredibly frustrating. He has come through the academy, he knows the club inside and out, but he cannot get a look in because of the competition. Why this is a problem for United? While it is easy to focus on how this affects Mainoo personally, we also need to think about what this means for Manchester United as a club. Losing a talented homegrown player would be a significant blow for several reasons. First, there is the financial aspect. United have invested years of coaching and development into Mainoo. If he leaves now, all of that investment walks out the door for potentially a very small fee. Given his contract situation, United might not even get much money for him. Second, there is the message this sends to other young players in the academy. If someone as talented as Mainoo cannot break into the first team, what hope do the other youngsters have? This could damage United's ability to attract and develop young talent in the future. Third, there is the long-term planning aspect. United need to think about life after Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro. Both players are getting older and will not be at the club forever. Mainoo could have been part of the solution to that problem, but now they might need to spend big money to replace them. Fourth, there is the homegrown player requirement. Premier League rules require clubs to have a certain number of homegrown players in their squads. Losing Mainoo would make it harder for United to meet those requirements without limiting their options in the transfer market. What other clubs are thinking? The report suggests that Chelsea have previously shown interest in Mainoo, and the player himself is open to a move abroad. This tells us that other clubs recognize his talent even if Amorim does not seem to rate him highly. Chelsea, in particular, have a track record of developing young midfielders. They gave Mason Mount his breakthrough, and they have other young players like Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo who are thriving in their system. From Chelsea's perspective, signing Mainoo would make a lot of sense. He is young, he is English, he is homegrown, and he would probably be available for a reasonable fee given his contract situation. If they could convince him to join, it could turn out to be excellent business. Foreign clubs are also reportedly interested, and this might actually be the best option for Mainoo's development. Sometimes a change of scenery and a different style of football can unlock a player's potential in ways that staying in familiar surroundings cannot. Think about Jadon Sancho, who left Manchester City's academy to join Borussia Dortmund and became one of the most exciting young players in Europe. Or Jude Bellingham, who left Birmingham City to join Dortmund and is now one of the best midfielders in the world. Maybe Mainoo needs a similar move to reach his full potential. Maybe the pressure and expectations at United are actually holding him back rather than helping him develop. The time factor. One of the most important aspects of this story is the timing. The transfer window closes next week, which means any decision needs to be made very quickly. From United's perspective, they need to decide whether they want to keep fighting to convince Mainoo to stay, or whether they would rather cash in now while they can still get some money for him. If they keep him and he runs down his contract, they could lose him for nothing in less than 2 years. That would be a disaster from a financial perspective and would leave them scrambling to replace him at the last minute. But if they sell him now and he goes on to become a star at another club, they will look foolish for letting him go. This is the kind of decision that can define a club's transfer strategy for years to come. From Mainoo's perspective, he needs to decide whether he is willing to be patient and fight for his place, or whether he wants to take control of his career and move somewhere he will get regular playing time. At 20 years old, he is at a crucial stage of his development. These are the years when players either establish themselves as top-level professionals or fall by the wayside. He cannot afford to waste time sitting on the bench if he wants to fulfill his potential. The wages issue explained. Let us talk more about those wage demands that have reportedly caused problems in contract negotiations. Mainoo is said to be looking for around £150,000 per week, which United are unwilling to pay at this stage. To put this in context, £150,000 per week is serious money in football. It would put Mainoo among the higher earners at the club, despite the fact that he has barely played this season. From Mainoo's perspective, he probably looks around and sees players who are not much better than him earning similar amounts. He might also look at what young players at other top clubs are earning and feel like United are not valuing him properly. From United's perspective, paying £150,000 per week to a player who cannot get into the team would set a dangerous precedent. Other young players would expect similar deals, and the wage bill would spiral out of control. There is also the question of what Mainoo has actually done to deserve those wages. Yes, he has potential, but potential does not pay the bills or win trophies. United need to see consistent performances at the highest level before they commit to such a large financial investment. This wage dispute might actually be more important than the playing time issue. Even if Amorim started playing Mainoo regularly tomorrow, the contract situation would still need to be resolved. And if the two sides cannot agree on wages, the player will still end up leaving eventually. What Amorim's long-term plan might be. It is worth considering that Ruben Amorim might have a long-term plan for Mainoo that we cannot see yet. Maybe the manager thinks the player needs more time to develop before he can handle the demands of regular first-team football. Maybe Amorim wants to see how Mainoo responds to being left out. Some managers use this as a motivational tool to push players to work harder and improve their game. Maybe the manager plans to gradually introduce Mainoo to his system through cup games and easier fixtures before throwing him into the deep end of Premier League football. Or maybe Amorim simply does not rate Mainoo as highly as the previous coaching staff did. Different managers have different preferences and different ideas about what makes a good player. The problem is that we do not know what Amorim's plan is, and neither does Mainoo apparently. Without clear communication about his role and future prospects, it is understandable that the young midfielder is starting to look elsewhere. The academy connection. One of the most sad aspects of this story is what it means for United's connection with their academy. The club has always prided itself on giving opportunities to homegrown players and developing talent from within. Some of United's greatest ever players came through the youth system. The class of '92, Marcus Rashford, and many others have shown that the pathway from academy to first team can produce world-class players. But if Mainoo leaves, it sends a message that even the most talented academy graduates cannot count on getting opportunities at United. This could damage the club's reputation for developing young players and make it harder to attract the best prospects. It also raises questions about the point of having an academy at all if the products of that academy cannot break into the first team. What is the purpose of spending millions on youth development if you are not going to use the players you develop? The financial implications. Let us think about the money involved in this situation. United have spent years and probably millions of pounds developing Mainoo from a young boy into a professional footballer. All of that investment could walk out the door for a relatively small transfer fee because of his contract situation. Even if United get £20 to £30 million for him, that probably does not cover what they have spent on his development over the years. But the bigger financial implication is what happens if Mainoo goes somewhere else and becomes a star. If he joins Chelsea or moves abroad and develops into a £100 million player, United will look very foolish for letting him go so cheaply. This is the risk with any young player, but it is particularly painful when it happens with homegrown talent. United could end up having to spend huge money to replace a player they developed themselves. What the fans think. United fans are split on this situation, which probably reflects how complicated it really is. Some fans think Mainoo should be patient and work harder to earn his place in the team. They argue that no young player is entitled to playing time and that he needs to prove himself in training. Other fans think Amorim is making a mistake by not giving Mainoo more opportunities. They point to his performances last season and argue that he has already shown enough to deserve regular chances. Some fans worry about the message this sends about United's commitment to youth development. They fear that the club is abandoning its traditions and becoming just like every other team that buys players instead of developing them. Other fans trust Amorim's judgment and believe that if the manager does not think Mainoo is ready, then he probably is not ready. They argue that the manager sees the player in training every day and knows better than fans who only see him in matches. The comparison with other young players. It is interesting to compare Mainoo's situation with other young players at top clubs around Europe. How do other teams handle talented youngsters who are not quite ready for regular first-team football? Some clubs, like Borussia Dortmund, are known for giving young players opportunities even if they are not perfect yet. They accept that young players will make mistakes but believe that playing time is essential for development. Other clubs, like Manchester City, tend to be more cautious with young players. They would rather loan them out or keep them in the reserves until they are completely ready for the demands of first-team football. Real Madrid and Barcelona have academies that produce world-class players, but even they struggle to give all their talented youngsters opportunities in the first team. Competition is just too fierce at the highest level. Maybe the problem is not specific to United or Amorim. Maybe this is just the reality of modern football, where the pressure to win immediately means there is less patience for developing young players. The international dimension. Another factor to consider is Mainoo's international career. At 20 years old, he is at an age where he should be thinking about breaking into the England setup or potentially representing another country if he is eligible. But international coaches want to see players performing regularly at club level. If Mainoo is not getting minutes at United, it will be much harder for him to catch the attention of national team managers. This creates additional pressure on the situation. Not only is Mainoo missing out on club football, but he could also be jeopardizing his international prospects by staying at United and not playing. Moving to a club where he would get regular playing time could be the key to unlocking his international career. This might be another reason why he is seriously considering his options. What happens next? So what happens now? With the transfer window closing next week, this situation needs to be resolved very quickly. If United really want to keep Mainoo, they need to do three things. First, they need to give him some playing time to show that he is part of their plans. Second, they need to have honest conversations about his role and development path. Third, they might need to compromise on the contract negotiations. If they cannot do those things, then selling him might be the best option for everyone involved. United would get some money, and Mainoo would get the chance to develop his career elsewhere. The worst-case scenario for United would be keeping an unhappy player who runs down his contract and leaves for nothing in 2 years. That would be a lose-lose situation for everyone. The lessons for United. Regardless of what happens with Mainoo, this situation should teach United some important lessons about how they handle young players. First, communication is crucial. Young players need to understand what is expected of them and what their development path looks like. If Mainoo had a clear understanding of Amorim's plans for him, he might be more willing to be patient. Second, contract negotiations should happen before players have less than 2 years left on their deals. Waiting too long creates problems and gives players too much leverage. Third, there needs to be a pathway between the academy and the first team. If the gap is too big, talented youngsters will look elsewhere for opportunities to develop. Fourth, managers and the club need to be aligned on youth development. If the manager does not want to use academy players, then what is the point of having an academy? Looking to the future, the Kobbie Mainoo situation is about much more than just one player. It is about United's identity as a club, their approach to youth development, and their long-term planning. If they lose Mainoo, it will not be the end of the world. There are other talented young players in the academy, and the club can always buy players to fill gaps in the squad. But losing him would be a symbol of broader problems at the club. Problems with planning, communication, and commitment to the values that once made United special. The next week will be crucial for everyone involved. Decisions made now could shape United's approach to youth development for years to come. The bottom line. Kobbie Mainoo is reportedly willing to quit Manchester United after being frozen out by Ruben Amorim. With less than 2 years left on his contract and wage negotiations at a standstill, the 20-year-old midfielder is seriously considering his options. This situation highlights the challenges facing modern football clubs when it comes to developing young talent. The pressure to win immediately often conflicts with the patience required to develop homegrown players. For United, losing Mainoo would be more than just losing one player. It would be losing a symbol of what the club used to represent, a place where talented youngsters could develop into world-class players. The next week will tell us a lot about United's priorities and their commitment to youth development. Will they find a way to keep one of their most promising academy graduates? Or will they let him go and continue down the path of buying rather than building? At Unite United News, we will continue to follow this story closely and bring you all the latest developments. This is exactly the kind of situation that defines a club's character and determines their future direction. Whatever happens, this story serves as a reminder that talent alone is not enough in modern football. Players also need opportunities, clear communication, and the right environment to reach their potential. Right now, it seems like Mainoo is not getting those things at Manchester United. The clock is ticking, and decisions need to be made. Will Kobbie Mainoo still be a Manchester United player when the transfer window closes? And if not, will United regret letting him go? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain, this story is far from over. Stay with Unite United News for all the latest updates on this developing situation and everything else happening at Old Trafford. When United News matters most, we are the source you can trust to get the full story.